The detective asked me, he goes, do you know these people? I said, nah, man, I never seen them. I don't know who they are. And then like out of a freaking movie, he pulls out of a folder a photo of me and that dude together.
The following is a hypothetical story from my past. The names and places may have been changed to protect the guilty. Let's get to it.
For this one, we have to travel way back to 2005. I guess that would make it the 20th anniversary of the first time a detective set me down for questioning. Spoiler alert, it was not the last. 2005, I was a wee lad working as a pizza delivery driver. I had hit some hard times and I winded up renting a room from a dude I worked with there at the pizza shop, right? Dude was considerably older than me. And it's funny, you look back on, at the time, it's just like, whatever. But you look back on stuff like that and you're like, well, that's kind of weird. Because the dude would have been like the age I am now. And thinking me hanging out with, anyone of that age would be bananas. I'm renting a room from the guy, and I didn't really know his family, but apparently his grandmother was in the hospital, and the guy I rented the room from was tasked with taking care of her house. I don't know what that meant. Watering the plants, checking the mail, whatever. He didn't have a vehicle though. So he asked me, he goes, man, it's like a 45-minute drive. Will you take me to my grandmother's house so I can do whatever? So I agreed. It's a funny thing too. The dude was so freaking fat that my car, with me driving and him on the passenger seat, it would sit like this and you could feel loss of power, right? Or if I went over anything in the road, that thing would scrape. So we go to his grandmother's property. We go in and I sit down at the kitchen table and he goes off to do whatever he does. So this guy comes back and he's got like 4 to 6 credit cards, his grandmother's credit cards. And he's like, hey man, these are still good, meaning they're not expired. So he asked me if I still had my buddy who was into that sort of thing. Now me, I never got into messing with like credit cards, checks, things like that, because they're too easily tracked. Like, almost any place you're going to use those is going to have a camera. So all they got to do is match when the card was used versus who used it. Boom, they have your photo. It's just way too easy to get busted. The squeeze is not worth the juice on this one. So I tell him, yeah, I'll link you guys together. You guys can work out a deal. So that's exactly what I did, which, by the way, how crazy is it that you take credit cards from your grandmother who is in the hospital, grandmother, period. So I take them to meet, and the guy tells, the credit card guy tells the guy I rent the room from, he says, look, I can't pay you outright for these. I don't even know if they work. He said, we're kind of stuck to using self-checkout. It just started happening, at least in my area. So he's like, pick anything or a group of items from Walmart you want. Now, with this guy living paycheck to paycheck, you'd think he'd get something he can sell or something that would make life better. But I believe the item he chose was a television. So he got the television, right? And then my other buddy who was using the cards just went absolutely bananas on these things, I don't know how many places he went to, but he was bragging about how good these were, okay? Fast forward, I don't know, 3 weeks down the road or so, the dude I gave the cards to, he calls me up and, see, he had a girlfriend. And I knew the girl pretty well because she had like hopped from like homie to homie to homie. So he calls me up and he's like, hey, she's stranded somewhere. Can you pick her up and just take her from point A to point B? I said, yeah, no problem. So we stop at a gas station. I sit in the vehicle. She goes ahead and grabs gas. And then when I'm taking her to her destination, she tells me how crazy these cards are. She's like, it's almost like they don't have a limit. They're not getting shut off. We're using them almost every day. These things are an absolute gold mine. I go back to my house and my buddy's like, hey, man. My grandma's about to get out of the hospital. We need to go back to her house to check on everything again. So I take him back, and once again, I'm sitting there at the kitchen table, And I look over and she had one of them like big old school like message machines, answer machines. It has a display of the numbers of messages. It was either 20 something or 30 something. So I go over assuming the worst on those and, I hit the message and it was one after another from the credit card companies. This is Discovery. There are some suspicious purchases on your account. Beep. This is Bank of America. We saw you spent $2,500 at Walmart. And it was just over and over. And then they were getting more and more aggressive. We need to talk to you now. Now, why they didn't shut off these cards, I have no idea. Maybe grandma had gone on spending sprees, so this fit within her pattern of spending. But I really doubt that one. So I tell my buddy, he's like, oh shit. And he removes any letters or anything that were involved in that. And we go ahead and get on down the road. He gets word that, these credit cards are just going bananas. And he's like, I want something else. I was like, all right, I'll go talk to him. So it took a little bit. And I meet with my buddy who had the cards. And I'm like, man, he's getting all weird about this shit. Like, I know y'all made a deal, but like, give him something. I said, dude's struggling to even get groceries, which is why it's so silly to get a TV. I asked them if they'd go to Walmart, get a few shopping carts worth of food, stock the whole house, right? So they go ahead and do that. They provide him with groceries, everything as well. By this point, the grandmother is out of the hospital. All of this whole thing has came to light that someone must have broken in. Someone must have, somehow gotten these cards. And it's, of course, reported to the authorities. And all of the cards do get shut down. Luckily, since I was getting all this information from them, I was able to tell my buddy with the cards, hey, heat's coming down. I don't know if you can still use these. Get rid of them. Separate yourself from everything. So life goes back to normal. Some time passes, I'd say somewhere between 1 and 3 months. I'm asleep in my room on that house, and the dude I was renting it from starts banging on the door like he's the police, which was very abnormal. And I'm like, man, leave me the fuck alone. And he's like, dude, there's multiple cops outside. There's detectives. You need to get up. Which is bananas that he would even answer the door for that, right? I go ahead. I get up. All of this. I go outside and I sit on the steps. Basically, to paint the picture, it was like a little stoop. I'm sitting on it. My vehicle's like 5 feet from us. The car he pulled up in, and there's a second car, but it's just him that's out. And he's got this little cheap beige suit on. And he identifies himself as a detective. Now, he wasn't from the county I was in. He was from the neighboring county. And he's like, I want to talk to you about these credit card charges, da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, dude, I have, no clue what you're talking about. He goes, well, that's a pretty funny story because these credit cards were used to fill up your vehicle with gas. A woman pumped gas into this vehicle right here. And I'm like, holy shit. This fucking idiot broad used the cards to fill up my vehicle when I gave her a ride. I never even thought anyone would be that foolish, right? Because once again, like I say, it's too easy. You're doing the cops' work for them. They had her picture. They had my plates. Lucky for me, I didn't get out of the vehicle and I had like jet black tint. Anywho, I tell them, I said, man, everybody in this neighborhood uses my vehicle. I said, look, right there, 2 blocks away, there's like Section 8 apartments. Over here, Section 8 housing. Over here's like welfare type housing. I said, man, everyone uses my vehicle. So he said, I want you to tell me every single person who uses your vehicle. I'm like, man, I just got up. I don't even know everyone's name. I'm trying to play dumb and play vague because he hasn't gotten to the point yet. So eventually, he shows me photos of the people who were using the cards. Like I said, it's way too easy. So all of these photos were overhead shots from them walking into stores. This Walmart 45 minutes away. This Walmart an hour away. A Walmart in our own town. And I think Home Depot or Lowe's, one of them had just gotten them. But you could tell that's where they're from because they were overhead shots of them walking in. And you could see those stacks, right, that you walk in, their sensors for like the tags or whatever to meow, meow. So he shows me all these photos, and the girl had tried to make herself look different in most of them. And my buddy was wearing sunglasses in all of them, except for one. There was one, you could see him just looking straight up. And the detective asked me, he goes, do you know these people? I said, nah, man, I never seen them. I wish I could help you. I really would, but I don't know who they are. And then like out of a freaking movie, he pulls out of a folder a photo of me and that dude together. Now, bear in mind, I only saw the photo for a few seconds, but it didn't look like a surveillance photo. It looked like someone actually took a picture of us, which is entirely possible because this was a close friend of mine and we spent a decent amount of time together. So, like I say, he goes, you ever met this dude? I said, nah, I've never met him. I don't know who he is. And he goes, oh yeah, how about now? Shows me a picture of me and him. I'm like, nah, I don't recognize him. I don't even know if that's me. And he's like, man, you got dreadlocks. I'm not stupid. I know you know more about this. I need to know this information. So we just went round and round. And I'm like, man, I have no idea. And he said, this is how this is going to work. See, this day he was questioning me was on the weekend. It was Saturday, Sunday, whatever. He goes, at 9 a.m. on Monday, you're going to be at my office in, like I say, it was a neighboring county. It wasn't the one we were in. He goes, you're going to be in my office. You're going to have a list ready of every person that drove that car. And somehow you're going to remember exactly who this dude is and who this girl is. He said, if you don't show up, you're going to have a warrant for your arrest. So, obviously, that shook me a little bit. Like I say, I think this was on a Saturday. By Sunday evening, I had moved out of that house. I had moved further, I guess it would be north. I never went and met with the dude, right? I never messed with it. I even tried to distance myself away from the dude who had took his grandmother's credit cards because, like I say, there's a bunch of weirdness with that guy. So by the grace of God, it seems they never even issued a warrant. Because see, the way my town is that more or less in the center of town, it switches counties. Now, it might be actually at the city limits, but what is generally thought of as the center of town, it goes right into that county. So for about 5 years, I completely avoided that. I wouldn't go to Target. I wouldn't go to this video game store. If I was in someone's vehicle and they needed to drive over to that side, I'd be like, dude, drop me off. I don't care. Take me to a freaking Starbucks, McDonald's. Doesn't matter. I'm not going there. And the guy who actually used the cards, this guy they had all the photos of, he winds up getting pinched. It wasn't too long after that. Now, it was an unrelated charge, but it was a greater charge. And that was a pattern of behavior with this guy still to this day, since we were kids. He would do this same thing, not credit cards, but the other thing, do some time, get out of jail, say, I'm going to be a better man, and then go back to it, go back in. So my thoughts always were maybe they didn't have enough evidence or info to really pursue it, or maybe since he was the guy, and they obviously knew who he was, that since the charge he actually got pinched for was so much greater than this credit card fraud charge would have been, that they dropped it. I have absolutely no idea, but I never went and met with the dude. I never got a warrant out, or at least never got arrested for one. I know I don't have an active warrant now. At this point, I was still a teenager, and I was 100% in the category of what you could call...
You's a dumb criminal. That's right. How'd you make it this far? Dumb criminal. Trying to steal a cop car.
Now, like I say, this is the first time I got questioned by detectives, but it definitely wasn't the last. Maybe we'll talk about the next time in the next episode. This next time, though, was actually in a police station while I was in custody, in the room, at the table with the detectives. And, nothing was scarier than that day. Waking up covered in blood, not remembering what you did the night before while you're in police custody. But like I say, we will have to save that story for the next time because this is just but the first time I was questioned by detectives. And this wraps up this edition of Hypothetical Stories from My Past.
Legal disclaimer. The following is a hypothetical story from my past. The names and places may have been changed to protect the guilty. Let's get to it.